Hello, welcome to BBC World News. The New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern has made the surprise announcement she's standing down. She'll leave her post at the start of February and won't lead her party into October's general election. At an emotional news conference, she gave her reason. In her own words, she just didn't have enough left in the tank to carry on. Shaima Khalil reports.
Holding back tears as she made this announcement.
Saying that I will not be seeking re-election.
In an emotional press conference that shocked the nation, Jacinda Ardern said there was no secret scandal behind her resignation, only that she no longer had the energy to go on as leader.
I know what this job takes, and I know that I no longer have enough in the tank to do it justice.
Ms Ardern was the youngest head of government in the world when she was elected Prime Minister in 2017. Just 37 years old at the time. She soon became a global icon for progressive politics. She gave birth to her daughter Neve while in power, becoming the second woman in modern history to do so, after Pakistan's late leader Benazir Bhutto. The Prime Minister said that while the last 5.5 years were the most fulfilling of her life, they also had their challenges. Her premiership has been tested time and time again, especially by the Christchurch terror attacks, the worst in New Zealand's modern history. 51 people were killed and dozens of others were wounded when a gunman shot worshippers during Friday prayers on March the 15th in 2019. Jacinda Ardern grieved with the families. Her decisiveness and empathy united the nation at the most tragic of times. She also steered the country through the COVID-19 pandemic. Thanks to an early and strict lockdown, New Zealand has had one of the lowest death rates globally.
Well, I think she'll be remembered as a really historically great Prime Minister. I mean, our COVID response is known as being world leading. We had relatively few deaths. We had that lockdown and she had an incredibly good communicative style and brought a lot of New Zealanders along with her throughout that.
Ms Ardern won a landslide second term in 2020, but her popularity has slid as the public's trust in government steadily declined with a deteriorating economic situation. Her centre-left Labour Party will elect a new leader and new Prime Minister on Sunday. The country's general election will be held on October the 14th, but the Prime Minister's last day in office is February the 7th. Jacinda Ardern will be remembered for steering her country through tough times and as a head of state who led with kindness and compassion. Shaima Khalil, BBC News, Sydney.
Well, Bryce Edwards is a political analyst and lecturer at Victoria University of Wellington in New Zealand. Hello to you. There's a lot of shock at this announcement. How much of a surprise was it to you?
It was a shock to everyone, I think. No one saw this coming today. But again, some of us weren't surprised because the writing did seem to be on the wall many months ago, because the Labour government, yes, they got that historic victory in 2020 where they received 50% of the vote. But a year later, their support started plummeting in the polls, and Jacinda Ardern's support started going down quite considerably. We started suffering the COVID hangover, if you like, and especially in terms of the economy, but lots of individual crises, housing crisis, cost of living crisis, infrastructure not working, health and education, things that the government hadn't fixed. And it started to come back to bite the government, and people lost faith in this Labour government and Ardern.
So October's forthcoming general election would have been a very difficult election for her to face, given all that you've just listed.
Exactly. So they won 50% of the vote nearly 3 years ago. Most polls have put Labour and the Prime Minister on about 32%. So they've lost a third of their support. Meanwhile, the right-wing party, the National Party, has overtaken them, and they've been, looking to kick this government out. So in a sense, Jacinda Ardern has got out instead of being pushed out come election time. And so, not many leaders know to get out before they lose elections, but I think Jacinda Ardern has been smart enough to do so.
And you heard her words that she didn't have enough left in the tank. How tough are the last couple of years? How tough have they been for her compared to how she began her term?
Well, I think it was tough right from the start. She had a very difficult coalition. Using proportional representation in New Zealand, she had to coalesce with some difficult parties and politicians. Then she had to deal with tragedies, the Christchurch mosque attack, a volcano erupting, and then, of course, COVID. And she's had a lot of pressure on herself personally. As a young woman in politics, she's had to deal with all sorts of sexism and a lot of hate. And that polarisation has actually got worse, really, in the last year. New Zealand isn't traditionally a sort of polarised or nasty place in politics, but it has become like that in more recent days. It's become quite polarised. So I think she was looking at an election campaign where she would have come up against a lot of protest, a lot of hate, potentially even threats to her physically.
And I wonder how her time in office will be remembered when we look back, say, in a decade's time, when you're giving your politics lectures then in the future.
I think she'll be remembered mostly fondly for getting us through different crises, especially COVID. But also she'll be looked at a bit tragically as well. She had so much potential, she promised so much, and that has been part of her demise because she promised a transformational government that would deal with inequality, poverty, climate change, a housing crisis. And those are the things that haven't really been shifted in the last few years. And so it's not just, anger from the right, from her opponents. There's also a lot on the left, her own side, that have been disillusioned, disappointed that this government and Ardern haven't done enough to progress, a progressive agenda.
Bryce Edwards, very interesting to talk to you. Thank you very much for talking to us there. Thanks. From Wellington in New Zealand. Well, there is a lot more about Jacinda Ardern, how she changed New Zealand politics and all around the world, as well as reaction to this shocking news that she will be standing down in 3 weeks' time. It's taken pretty much everyone by surprise. You can find details of the problems she faced. We were talking about them there, some of them, and how she tackled them. Just go to bbc.com/news or the BBC app.